Now let's get into the Witch Queen reveal for Destiny 2. So, Hive Guardians, that's kind of the big news. Did you guys watch any of the trailer yourselves?
Oh yeah, I've watched the trailer a few different times. And I watched the little teaser that they put out before the trailer came out. There was like 10 seconds. Um, the premise is promising. I just hope they don't pull a bungee on it.
Ooh, Bungie's now a verb.
Well, I mean, it kind of is in a way. Like they do have a habit of getting people really psyched up for these things, and I don't think they do it, with any real bad intentions.
Oh no.
I feel like sometimes they set these large goals for themselves, like you should, but instead of setting them internally, they kind of like display it in the trailer. Um, it's something.
It's just it's the stories are always decent when you play the expansions, but it's there are games as a service. They came out a bit ago and said that they're going to go the route of a games as a service system instead of making a bunch of different numbered destinies. And that's a great idea. I think it's wonderful, and I think it fits the game. It's basically like a Diablo style game with guns. But you know the difference between like Path of Exile and Diablo style games, that you can't, you know, necessarily be different from or move away from. So they have multi-tiered content that is ever changing, that is around to keep people engaged, and it's not recycled content. It's different content, and it doesn't have to be super in depth or anything like that, but it's different takes on certain content that keeps it fresh. Like Path of Exile's end game is like immense and expansive, and I'm not saying it needs to be that large,
Mhm.
but you gotta have something other than grind for these god rolls on these guns and grind the same content you've been grinding for the past year or 2 years. Um,
Yeah,
and that's about it.
yeah. Well, I wonder. So they showed in the trailer how you would crush like one of the hive ghosts, uh, which kind of feels like Savathun just tricked the regular ghosts somehow, because they were saying like when you're in her throne world, which for anybody who's not kind of up on what that means, it's like a little pocket universe where she is in charge of everything, and sort of everybody who goes into it has to somewhat obey the laws of her universe. So,
Think Jujutsu Kaisen, if you guys watch that. Perfect example. Jujutsu Kaisen, it's the same thing. I know you all may not know what that is, but the people to watch it, you understand.
it sounds familiar, but help me out.
It is a supernatural anime. Basically, they fight these spirits or whatnot, and these spirits are able to make exactly what you're saying, like these special worlds or zones, basically, and you have to basically play by the rules to kind of get out, or at least
Oh, okay.
figure out how to break those rules. So it's the same type of system. Any anime, junkie out there is gonna know of that. So it just works out.
I feel like I've let everybody down. Um,
How dare you?
I know. I actually just watched Tokyo Ghoul the other day, the whole thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh God, I love that
I
series.
think it's so funny because you're the one that turned me on to that, and now you're like, nah.
It's just the
they
ending.
yeah.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I absolutely understand why. No, I know exactly why, and it was universal.
Yeah, I'm
We
not
all
gonna.
pretty
Yeah,
much were on the same page with that.
it was my favorite
Um,
fucking anime. Um,
for a minute there, yeah.
seasons 1 and 2. Anyway, we're getting off topic, but
I know it. I know
um,
it.
so another thing that they're coming out with, obviously, that they're talking about is the glaive weapon, which I'm all for. I love the idea of it. Uh, but they said that it's going to be a first-person weapon,
Hmm.
which I'm not sure how I feel about that. Like, I like the idea of it. At the same time, are they going to switch swords? Because didn't they release like a different kind of sword as well in the last expansion, Beyond Light?
Uh, Not really. I mean, you got that chainsaw sword that was really, really dope. I don't think they're gonna change swords.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think it makes sense. It's gonna be its own kind of weapon style, and it's basically gonna be the mix. It's your gunblade, right? And it's fine. That's fine, and that works. It being first person, I think is gonna be really, really cool take on it. I do like that they're trying to spice things up with the combat and bring in some fresh takes because
It needs
it needs it. Yeah.
Yeah. It
So
does.
I like it. I don't know how it's going to play. They definitely have a task on their hands to make sure it plays smoothly and that it can be viable. I think you're going to want to see a lot of people are going to want to see that be a viable weapon for raiding and for doing the I forget the name of the most difficult dungeons in the
Oh
game.
my God. Now I'm blanking it. I probably could have told you a second ago. We're not talking about
Nightfalls, I
Yes.
believe. So
I think that's
So I'm pretty sure people are going to want to speed run those with the glaive, and they're going to want to do something in the raid with the glaive. So I hope that the power is scaled to the point where that is something that having that in one of those slots is beneficial.
Well, so that does make me think of something. So that's another thing that they're adding in. They're actually adding quite a bit with this expansion now that I look at it, or look it over again. Weapon crafting, which
Yes.
people have been clamoring for years because of how bad the RNG could be at times. And I think that they and I could be wrong here, but I think they were saying that that's sort of how the glaive gets introduced into the game.
Yes. Yeah. You have to craft it. It's the first one you get, at least you have to craft. Which is cool. I like that take on it, and it makes it feel special. Everyone's gonna get a glaive. They're not gonna have to wait for a special drop, and they're not gonna get this glaive drop that's gonna be completely trash. You're gonna craft it, and I would have to think. I'm gonna repeat it. I would have to think, Bungie, the first one you craft is gonna have some decent stats on it for you to be able to play around with right away. Bungie.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a cool take on it. I like that.
Well, yeah, I do too, and I'm hoping that system works out pretty well. I mean, even if it's just as simple as some people are thinking it's going to be, which is it's simply a better way to get the roles you want and more control over your passives without a whole lot of extra customization. I think even that will be enough, but I'm hoping that on down the line we get into more customization, even appearance wise. That would be really
It's a start, and it's doing what I said, what I kind of talked about earlier. Because again, at the core of this game, it is just another Diablo / Path of Exile / Hero Siege.
which is amazing.
It's a looter shooter. Yes, it's got guns in it, but it's a looter.
I mean,
Content grind. Like,
they're fun for
and they need to look at it that way.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's like, why do I need better guns? So I can get more better guns.
So I can kill bigger things, so I can get more money, so I can buy better guns.
Right.
I almost wish they would add like I said, like a Diablo 3 PoE mapping / Rift system into the game. It's built for it. It's ready for it. I don't know why they don't write into the lore, and maybe they'll do this because the other thing that they mentioned is the fact that they're pulling an FF14, and this specific story series will be ending soon. Not this expansion, but I think the next expansion after this one is going to be bringing the light / dark, generic storyline to an end. So the Traveler is going to take a back seat, from what I'm guessing. That's not fully confirmed, but light versus dark, that narrative is going to take a back seat, and we're going to get something new. And that'd be the perfect time to introduce some type of like endless tower that allows players to really that would give reason to get god rolls, right? Like endless tower, rogue style type deal where you could add specific exotics to be able to get if you climb through that tower. Certain things you're only able to get through climbing that tower, right? It'd be the ultimate test. You could do it with a fire team of 6. You can make it as difficult as you wanted. It would be perfect for that game. It'd be perfect for Destiny. So I really hope they kind of think about that, and eventually like introduce it, because it'd definitely be better than what they've got right now. But yeah, I think that's interesting that they announced too, and I don't know how many people caught it that narrative is going to be ending, and I think it's good because it's overplayed.
Well, it's been the overall story arc, and the problem is, I think they've run into an issue where the story starts to stall out. I know it did in parts of the last expansion where, as you're going through the seasons, like you were saying, one of the downfalls of that model is that you're given only so much story, like every 3 months, and for like the real hardcore players, they're done with it in like a week. Um, and then at that point, it's like, well, just do the repeatable stuff until we have more.
Yeah, and I'm okay. Don't get me wrong, I'm okay with living stories like Guild Wars 2 did, and that's a
Mm.
great way to keep the lore going and people engaged because they want to come back week over week to see what's developing with the story. But I also think the devs need to kind of put in a little bit of work with that stuff and not just have you going back to the same zone and say, "Oh, this is happening in these zones that you already have." Maybe create like it doesn't have to be a huge expansive zone, but create like a small little new zone where the story takes place at, like in the nook and cranny of
Oh, like an instance part of the zone?
like yeah, at like a special zone that you can only get to while you're doing the story, right? And
Yeah.
and one of your maps, like a sector. We have sectors. Why couldn't they instance out sectors and some of that story take place in a larger version of the sectors? Because the sector
Oh, yeah.
dungeons, they're really small, they're quick bangers to get like geared up really quick, and it's kind of cool. There's some lore attached to it, there's a boss attached to it. Why can't it be that, when this story is happening, whoever the interest of the story is, and they've done this for some of it, where they've come out with like completely different zones inside of areas, so they just need to
Sure.
expand upon that a bit more.
Yeah.
Like the Dreaming City, right? Like the Dreaming
Oh.
City had that one place in there where you had to do the tower defense. That was really cool.
Is that the well?
Because the well, because the story was surrounded around that, and
Yeah.
that worked. That was pretty good.
Well, one last thing then about the weapon crafting, and I kind of forgot. They did say that not all the legacy weapons are going to be in it at first, but they do plan to add them all. So over time, they're going to build out a pretty expansive roster of things that you can craft. Um, and I kind of was late replying to your part about that crafting. Um, the other thing I was going to say, and something that I really liked, they talked about how the campaign, and we were just talking about sectors and everything. Each level of the campaign is like its own distinct fantasy,
Yeah.
with its own theme, and I think that's brilliant. Just the amount of sort of playing around that they can do. They're not really restricted by anything in
Oh,
those terms. It's really purely what you can imagine, and they can go with it. Uh, and I'm wondering if they will introduce sort of a randomized way to kind of replay some of those things with a differential to it, even if it's
yeah, because
small.
they've done it in a very small scale with their nightfalls or whatever the case is, and having the different modifiers on it every week. That's cool. It's a great start, but it's the same nightfall, just with different modifiers on the bosses or whatever the case was, right? Like it's not outside of figuring out how to work around those modifiers. It's no different. It's the same dungeon. You know how it's going to turn out. You know who you're fighting at the end of it. It's woohoo. Big surprise here. I'd like to see them like really, really step it up.
Well, they did talk about
And
respawns being limited in some of these dungeons. I can't remember if that was actually a part of the game when I was playing, because I don't ever remember really failing many dungeons.
to get like the perfect score, dying
Yeah.
is not a good thing by any means. But I just switch it up, like, but along with those random modifiers, put in like a random in-game random boss there,
Oh, for
and
sure.
so instead of me knowing that I'm gonna get this boss every time I do this nightfall, like you don't know who's gonna show up.
Yeah.
You have no clue who's gonna show up at the end, right? Or even throughout all of the bosses. If you fight 3 bosses in that dungeon, like, or too many bosses and then a final boss, make it where like one of those modifiers is just you just don't know who's gonna show up. You just don't
Yeah.
know who.
Might even end up being sort of like you remember like Diablo, how when you're doing end game stuff, like certain enemies would show up and they were really just variations of a specific enemy.
Yep.
But sometimes they just raffle stomp you because they'd have like a selection of skills that would just destroy your character.
Or even I liked and I forget that I'm just bad with names, so I'm sorry you all because you're probably interested in what this is specifically. But with Path of Exile, they had a season where you basically crafted modifiers on the boss that you were about to fight. Like you went in, you collected these materials, and then the harder you made the boss, the better the loot was gonna be potentially.
Oh,
And
okay.
but when you played hardcore, remember, like if you died, your character went back to standard seat. So you
Oof.
could add in a road-like element there to where basically you're going through and you're getting this gear. And if you roll, we'll put a star system on a 5-star difficulty boss, right? You put all these modifiers on it, you're gonna get guaranteed a pinnacle piece of gear or a higher level eye level piece of gear when you're capped and you're grinding it out. And it's not and let's say, like, you can get 3 pieces from that a week, right?
Mhm.
But if you die, you get nothing from it, and it uses a key up. And you can only do this thing like a certain amount of times a
Oh,
week.
okay. I could see a
So
system
like
that's
something
sort of
like
like that.
that, like
Yeah.
anything like that, like to give a reason to why you want to grind out for god rolls, and then the reason to use them.
Yeah. Also, because it kind of makes, like, if there's risk, then there's also interest there. Like,
Yeah, it makes it, there's a satisfaction there. There's a gratification
yeah. I mean, I don't see
assigned
them
to that
doing it
risk.
just because I feel like they would be too hesitant to do that. But I mean, it would be fun to even just kind of consider it. Um, there's some other stuff, gameplay wise, that they're adding that I thought was finally is what I was thinking. One is crossplay,
Yeah,
and
that's live now. That
yeah,
was live, yeah.
and I'm wondering how that's working out because I haven't actually tried to play myself, and I haven't seen a lot of news like how well it's working. I imagine it's fine. I can't really think of a reason why it wouldn't.
It
But
wouldn't be.
also the anti cheat, which might finally make Crucible fun.
Maybe.
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 I'm just saying, like, as a way to kind of extend the life cycle of the game. I think if PvP were more, and I don't understand why PvP can't be better in Destiny.
Careful.
I know,
Some people
right? Some people are gonna
really
get
love
so
it.
pissed. And
Yeah.
all I gotta say to those people is, God damn it, rewind and just hear me out here. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it could be better than what it is. Because if you really like something, you should be critical of it.
Oh yeah.
And I enjoyed the hell out of Destiny, and I love PvP shooters. I hated the Crucible. Couldn't stand it. I almost feel like they need to either tamp down the powers, in the Crucible, so it's more about the gunplay, or just do something so that it's a little bit less. I don't know, hunter dominated. It was ridiculous when I was playing. Like they would just destroy everybody.
Things have changed since I've played.
Oh, what was it?
Like it was all Titan all day.
Yeah, Titan's huge right now, or was huge. It's seen its changes, but I get what you're saying, and you don't want it to be dominated just by one. Have it a little more even.
Oh yeah,
Right.
for sure. But I mean, I am glad that they're adding both the crossplay and the anti-cheat. Now, did the crossplay, is it also for Crucible?
Yeah, it's across the board.
Oh, nice.
It's just crossplay now, and just boom.
Oh, in every zone. Period.
Yeah. Nothing's restricted by it, from what I've heard and seen. So,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic from some, and others are gonna be like, "Damn it,
you son of a bitch!" Oh, there we go. I knew I'd be the first person to do it. Gotta mark it. Dropping F-bombs at 19 and a half minutes.
Yeah, you did say earlier too, so.
Well, that I'm okay with.
Yeah.
But,
I wasn't going to call you out on it. I didn't have a problem with it.
But yeah, hopefully people don't. So, I mean, that really covers like the majority of the gameplay stuff that I can recall. Story-wise, I'm really interested. Like really, really interested to see where it goes.
It's gonna be nice. just kind of having you know,
Having Savathun finally show up is a big deal.
it is because she's been kind of working in the shadows, and she's just been one of those people for a really long time. And not only that, but the fact that she's got, you know, Ghost on her side, and we're gonna not only Ghosts. That's not even. I didn't even care about the Ghosts. The
I don't
fact
either.
that the Hive are gonna be using Guardian powers like Void,
Yes.
Fire. Jesus, that's gonna be great. That's gonna be a lot of fun to go against. And they have an opportunity, like we were talking about earlier, to do some really challenging, fun things with that. And I hope they don't
Oh my
squander it,
god, yeah.
because they should make that every bit as scary as everybody in the comment sections think it's gonna be. I want it to be difficult. I want progression to be stalled a bit, because leveling against those things is so brutal. Like
Mhm.
that you need to form like a little 3-man party to go out and level, because it's hard. Like I would love that. That would be such a
Especially,
breath of fresh air.
yeah, I mean, especially if it's for different zones. Like, you obviously kind of have to cater to the solo player, at least in some respect. But I would love to see, even if it's just zones that, like, maybe the loot is a little bit different. It doesn't even need to be better. But if the zone itself is different and more of a challenge, that's what I'm going to be doing, because that's more interesting.
Yep.
Savathun showing up, though, that is a huge deal. I don't know about the third, because Oryx was the taken
Brother.
king. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Savathun is the one who basically went into a black hole to try to feed her worm.
Yep.
Which, oh God, I can't wait to see what more of that. And then I can't remember the name of the third sister. So if anybody is watching and you can remember, please let us know in the comments. I don't remember her name, and I'm wondering if they're saving her for later. Because she was supposed to be like the warrior, like the knight.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's just... Destiny has a fantastic story. I'm glad to see that the light and the dark is going to finally come to an end, and I'm curious as to what they're going to do after that.
I am too.
What could possibly be, worse than the darkness? It's going to be very, very interesting, and I'd love to hear from people in the comments if they have any ideas of what they think would be basically the extension of the story afterward. I know that Bungie originally had plans for a part 3 where the darkness does win in the end of 2, essentially, and does the same thing it did at the beginning of Destiny. And you're all sort of left on a planet struggling to find out what's going on. I know they won't do that now, but God, it sounded amazing. It sounded really difficult, too. We'll see what happens. And I think that might be it for us this week, actually. I think we covered everything.
Right on.
Yeah. So that's it for us. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next week. Have a good one.
Peace.
Later.